Hello, everybody. It is AA Day. Woo woo. I got some exciting news today, so I can't wait to share it. My glass is all blurry. So I'm live on YouTube and Facebook this morning. Oh. I'll put my hair up out of my face. Anyways, let's go ahead and get this meeting started. So please be mindful in the comments, in the chat, that this is for Alcoholics Anonymous. And we don't do judgment here or any of that. So please refrain from that. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. If you're nervous about being in the chat, don't worry. I completely understand that. And I don't expect people to just pop into the chat and feel comfortable because, not everybody wants everybody to know that they're in a recovery or any of that stuff. So I understand that. But please subscribe and hit the like button. It does help me know that I'm reaching people with these meetings. I only go live mainly for AA. Once in a while I go fishing and I'll go live there, but other than that, most of my live streams are AA. So let's go ahead and get started. My name's Sandra and I'm an alcoholic. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Hold on, Facebook. I got to send my sponsor the link. I forgot all about that. My bad. Let me see here. We'll go here. Go here. Go to share. Go April. Lily's already there. Continue. There we go. Off they all go. Sorry about that, guys. So we are reading the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions book. We are on step 3 on page 34. Anyway, step 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over the care of God as we understood Him. Practicing step 3 is like the opening of a door, which to all appearances is still closed and locked. All we need is a key and the decision to swing the door open. There is only one key, and it's called willingness. Once unlocked by willingness, the door opens almost of itself, and looking through it, we shall see a pathway beside which is an inscription. It reads, "This is the way to a faith that works." In the first two steps, we were engaged in reflection. We saw that we were powerless over alcohol, but we also perceived that faith of some kind, if only in AA itself, is possible to anyone. These conclusions did not require action, they required only acceptance. Like all the remaining steps, step 3 calls for affirmation action. For it is only by action that we can cut away the self-will which has always blocked the entry of God, or, if you like, a higher power, into ourselves. Faith, to be sure, is necessary, but faith alone can avail nothing. We can have faith, yet keep God out of our lives. Therefore, our problem now becomes just how and by what specific means shall we be able to let Him in. Step 3 presents our first attempt to do this. In fact, the effectiveness of the whole AA program will rest upon how well and earnestly we have tried to come to a decision to turn our will and our lives over the care of God as we understand Him or understood Him. To very worldly and practical minded beginner, this step looks hard, even impossible. No matter how much one wishes to try, exactly how can he turn his own will and his own life over to the care of whatever God he thinks there is? Fortunately, we who have tried it, and with equal misgivings, we testify or can testify that anyone at all can begin to do it. We can further add that a beginning, even the smallest, is all that is needed. Once we have placed the key of willingness in the lock and have the door even so slightly open, we find that we can always open it some more. Though self-will may slam it shut again, as it frequently does, it will always respond the moment we can again pick up the key of willingness. Maybe this all sounds mysterious and remote, something like Einstein's theory of relativity, or a proposition to nuclear physics. It isn't at all. Let's look at how practical it actually is. Every man and woman who has joined AA and intends to stick has, without realizing it, made a beginning on step 3. Isn't it true that in all matters touching upon alcohol, each of them has decided to turn his or her life over to care, protection, and guidance of Alcoholics Anonymous? Tongue-tied this morning. Already a willingness has been achieved to cast out one's own will and one's own idea about the alcohol problem in favor of those suggested by AA. Any willing newcomer feels sure AA is the only safe harbor for the founding vessel he has become. Now, if this is not turning one's will and life over to a newfound providence, then what is it? But suppose that instinct still cries out, as it certainly will. Just a second. Sorry. Yes, respecting alcohol, I guess I have to be dependent upon AA. But in all other matters, I must still maintain my independence. Nothing is going to turn me into a nonity. Nonity? I don't know exactly what that word is, but I think I'm saying it right. If I keep on turning my life and my will over to the care of something or somebody else, what will become of me? I'll look like the hole in the donut. This, of course, is a process by which instinct and logic always seek to bolster egotism, and so frustrates instinct and logic always seek to bolster egotism, and so frustrate spiritual development. The trouble is that this kind of thinking takes no real account of the facts, and the facts seem to be these. The more we become willing to depend upon a higher power, the more independent we actually are. Therefore, dependence, as AA practices it, is really a means of gaining true independence of the spirit. Don't you dare do it, Ryder. No. You better not pee on that basket. That's what you were going to do, huh? Go lay down, booger. We really are, and how unconscious of that dependence. Every modern house has electric wiring carrying power and light to its interior. We are delighted with this dependence. Our main hope is that nothing will ever cut off the supply of current. By so accepting our dependence upon the marvel of science, we find ourselves more independent personally. Not only are we more independent, we are even more comfortable and secure. Power flows just where it is needed, silently and surely. Electricity, that strange energy so few people understand, meets our simplest daily needs and our most desperate ones too. Ask the polio sufferer confined to an iron lung who depends with complete trust upon a motor to keep the breath of life in him. That guy just recently passed away. I think it was a few years ago. But the moment our mental or emotional dependence is in question, how differently we behave, how persistently we claim the right to decide all by ourselves just what we shall link or what we shall think, or just how we shall act. Oh yes, we'll weigh the pros and cons of every problem. We listen politely to those who would advise us, but all the decisions are to be ours alone. Nobody is going to meddle with our personal independence in such matters. Besides, we think there is no one we can surely trust. We are certain that our intelligence, backed by willpower, can rightly control our inner lives and guarantee us success in the world we live in. This brave philosophy, wherein each man plays God, sounds good in the speaking, but it still has to meet the acid test. How well does it actually work? One good look in the mirror ought to be answer enough for an alcoholic. Should his own image in the mirror be too awful to contemplate, and it usually is, he might first take a look at the result normal people are getting from self-sufficiency everywhere. He sees people filled with anger and fear, society breaking up into warring fragments. Each fragment says to the other, "We are right and you are wrong." Every such pressure group, if it is strong enough, self-righteously imposes its will upon the rest. And everywhere the same thing is being done on an individual basis. The sum of all this mighty effort is less peace and less brotherhood than before. The philosophy of self-sufficiency is not paying off plainly enough. It is a bone-crushing juggernaut whose final achievement is ruined. Just a second. Now I need to figure out where I was. Okay. Should his own image in the mirror be too awful to contemplate, and it usually is, he might first take a look at the results normal people are getting from self-sufficiency. Everywhere he sees people filled with anger and fear, society breaking up into warring fragments. Each fragment says to the other, "We are right and you are wrong." Every such pressure group, if it is strong enough, self-righteously imposes its will upon the rest. And everywhere the same thing is being done on an individual basis. The sum of all this mighty effort is less peace and less brotherhood than before. The philosophy of self-sufficiency is not paying off plainly enough. It's a bone-crushing juggernaut. I know I read that already, but whose final achievement is ruin. Therefore, we who are alcoholics can consider ourselves fortunate indeed. Each of us has had his own near fatal encounter with the juggernaut of self-will, and has suffered enough under its weight to the willingness to look for something better. So it is by circumstance rather than by any virtue that we have been driven to AA, have admitted defeat, have acquired the rudiments of faith, and now want to make a decision to turn our will and our lives over the higher power. We realize that the word dependence, just a second. Sorry, I keep getting texts. We realize that the word dependence is as distasteful as many psychiatrists and sociologists, all those funky words, as it is to alcoholics, like our professional friends. We too, now you can go see Mike.
You want this shot?
We too are aware, leave it open, that there are wrong forms of dependence. We have experienced many of them. No adult man or woman, for example, should be in too much emotional dependence upon a parent. They should have been weaned long before, and if they have not been, they should wake up to the fact. This very form of faulty dependence has caused many rebellious alcoholics to conclude that dependence of any sort must be intolerable, damaging. But dependence upon an AA group or upon a higher power hasn't produced any baleful results. When World War II broke out, the spiritual principle had its first major test. AA entered the services and were scattered all over the world. Would they be able to take discipline, stand up under fire, and endure the monotony and misery of war? Would the kind of dependence they had learned in AA carry them through? Well, it did. They had even fewer alcoholic lapses or emotional binges than AA safe at home did. They were just as capable of endurance and valor as any other soldier, whether in Alaska or on the Salarino beachhead. Their dependence upon a higher power worked, and far from being a weakness, this dependence was their chief source of strength. So how exactly can the willing person continue to turn his will and his life over to the higher power? He made a beginning. We have seen when the commenced. My phone just fell over. What a meeting, right? It's a mess. A mess, I say. A mess. Stay. Back to reading. By now, though, the chances are that he has become convinced that he has more problems than alcohol, and that some of these refuse to be solved by all the sheer personal determination and courage he can muster. They simply will not budge. They make him desperately unhappy and threaten his newfound sobriety. Our friend is still victimized by remorse and guilt when he thinks of yesterday. Bitterness still overpowers him when he broods upon those he still envies or hates. His financial insecurity worries him sick, and panic takes over when he thinks of all the bridges to safety that alcohol burned behind him. Thank you, Ava. And how shall he even straighten out that awful gem that costs him the affection of his family and separate him from them? His lone courage and unaided will cannot do it. Surely he must now depend upon somebody or something else. At first, that somebody is likely to be his closest AA friend. He relies upon the assurance that his many troubles now made more acute because he cannot use alcohol to kill the pain, can be solved too. Of course, the sponsor points out that our friend's life is still unmanageable, even though he is sober. That after all, only a bare start of AA's program has been made. More sobriety brought about by the admission of alcoholism and by attendance at a few meetings is very good indeed. But it is bound to be a far cry from permanent sobriety and contented, useful life. That is just where the remaining steps of the AA program come in. Nothing short of continuous action upon these as a way of life can be the much desired result. Then it is explained that other steps of the AA program can be practiced with success only when step 3 is given a determined and persistent trial. This statement may surprise newcomers who have experienced nothing but constant deflation and a growing conviction that human will is of no value whatever. They can become persuaded, and rightly so, that many problems besides alcohol will not yield to a headlong assault powered by the individual alone. But now it appears that there are certain things which only the individual can do, all by himself, and in the light of his own circumstances, he needs to develop the quality of willingness. When he acquires willingness, he is the only one who can make the decision to exert himself. Trying to do this is an act of his own will. All of the 12 steps require sustained and personal exertion to conform to their principles, and so we trust to God's will. It is when we try to make our will conform with God's that we begin to use it rightly. To all of us, this was a most wonderful revelation. Our whole trouble had been the misuse of willpower. We have tried to bombard our problems with it instead of attempting to bring it into agreement with God's intention for us. To make this increasingly possible is the purpose of AA's 12 steps, and step 3 opens the door. Once we have come into agreement with these ideas, it is really easy to begin the practice of step 3. In all times of emotional disturbance or indecision, we can pause, ask for quiet, and in the stillness simply say, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thy will be done. Or thy, not me, will be done. Anyway, so step 3 is you have to believe in something bigger than yourself to help you get through those steps. Having the willingness to learn more about yourself and learn ways to stay away from that drink. It can be very hard, trust me. I've been there, done that. I can be around people that drink. It doesn't bother me very much anymore. But when I first got sober and I was starting to do my steps, if I even smelled alcohol or saw it or any of those things, to me it was like a struggle just to keep saying, no, I'm not going to go back down that path. I don't want to go there. That's not for me anymore. And it gets easier to put it over to a higher power, and having that willingness to accept that we have done things that we can't change, but we have done more things that we can change and make better. So like for me, my willingness was giving it to my higher power, because I'm not religious or anything. I'm baptized, but I'm not religious. I don't talk to God all the time, but I know that I have that higher power there that can take it and help me with it, and I have to work through it, and the willingness to work through it. Sometimes I just don't have that want at that moment, but for the willingness to accept those things that I can change, that I can't change, and to know what the difference is, it makes it easier for us to guide ourselves through those turbulent times and accepting, some things are just the way it is and there's no changing it. Like when I first came back to Portland, I was sober. I've been sober for 3 months. And that was all by myself. I did the withdrawals. I did it all alone. Well, I had family around me, but I was suffering those withdrawals by myself. It's not easy, but it's definitely worth it. I've gone through a lot of withdrawals. I had withdrawals from cigarettes. I have not smoked a cigarette since March 2 years ago. I recently went back to caffeinated soda, which I hadn't drank even Sprite for about 1.5 years, 2 years, maybe 3 at the most. But yeah, so I didn't know that I would go through withdrawals from the cigarettes and from the soda. But man, let me tell you, the cigarettes was just up there with getting rid of that alcohol. But I have a willingness to accept those things, that I'm not like everyone else and can have one drink. I can't do that. I've never been able to, because I've always had to have 2 or more and make sure I had the buzz feeling going on. And when I started into my alcoholic phase of my life, I just kept going. I didn't stop. Pass out for maybe an hour and do it all over again. But I found giving it up has been so much better for me and my mental stability, and accepting that I can't make things go my way. I can only control how I react. And that is why one of my friends from AA, my home group, he always said, make sure you have a way to leave. Don't get yourself stuck in that situation. If you need to leave, you need to make sure you have a way to exit. And so, obviously I do YouTube. I went to my first ever YouTube meetup, and I had a blast. But the first thing that happened was this guy turned around, and my sister and I went our first time ever going camping by ourselves, and on a road trip. So we were there, and I figured there was going to be alcohol there. Whatever, it doesn't bother me, But this guy turned around and he's like, you want some? And it was my always go-to. And I was like, oh no, nope. Recovering alcoholic, no. And he's like, oh, sorry. And so everybody accepted that my sister and I were sober, and that was the only time we got asked about if we wanted a drink. So a lot of people do understand. I say everywhere I go that I'm a recovering alcoholic. That's who I am. That's who I'm going to be for the rest of my life. Hopefully. I say hopefully because I don't want to go back out. That scares me more than anything, because I didn't like that person. I don't like that person still to this day. And I don't want to ever find that person again. she can stay in the past, because I was not all that in a sack of chips. I thought I was, but I wasn't. I definitely don't miss that ego of I'm going to drink. I don't give a shit what you say. I'm going to do whatever the hell I want, and you're not going to stop me. And that was my downfall right there. I gave up caring what other people thought, and I just did what I wanted to. And I do have a lot of regrets for that past, but then, if I hadn't gone through the alcoholic days, I wouldn't be sitting here able to say that AA works. It works as a whole. Everybody that comes into those rooms helps each other to get sober and stay sober. Not all of us get it on the first round. I relapsed before I ever even made it to AA, and I don't ever want to do that again. So I thank AA and everybody there, and I thank my family, my friends. I got one of my best friends, and I'm glad I'm sober and that I can do these meetings and help others in a widespread way and reach a lot of people. That's the point of AA. But definitely you need the willingness to accept that we can't drink, and a willingness to accept that there is something bigger than yourself. I know a lot of people don't want to, but it works. And I'm excited that my sister will be 11 years next month, and I'm really proud of her. And staying sober and being strong through all of those hard times. And yeah. Anyways, that's about all I got for today. I might take a nap. I don't know. Maybe. Anyways, I love you guys. God. Oh, and if you need help, please reach out. There is AA absolutely everywhere. There's NA everywhere. So if you're struggling today, please call somebody and make that step toward sobriety and toward a better life. So I love you guys. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Keep coming back. It works if you work it. Love you guys. Be safe out there, be kind, and stay sober.